Welcome to Calm Buddha. Let's begin tonight's story. The morning light rested softly against the paper windows as the traveler opened their eyes inside a small guest room of the mountain monastery. Cool air drifted through a narrow opening, carrying the faint scent of pine and damp stone. Outside, temple bells echoed through the valley with a gentle clarity that seemed to settle into the wooden walls. The traveler sat up slowly, feeling the firmness of the bedding, the smooth grains of the low table beside them, and the quiet that shaped the early hour. Stepping outside, they followed a simple path of worn stones leading toward the inner buildings. Mist moved among the pines, weaving through distant rooftops, glazed with morning dew. A senior monk waited near the threshold of the meditation hall, his robe resting lightly around him. He greeted the traveler with a small nod, the kind that expressed both welcome and stillness. Without speaking further, he guided them into a small reception room lit by a single lantern. Inside, the wooden floor carried the soft memory of countless footsteps. The monk gestured toward a cushion placed near the low table. The traveler settled onto it, noticing the faint warmth of the fabric and the slight give of the straw beneath. Nearby, incense curled upward in thin threads that gathered and dispersed near the ceiling. The monk sat across from them, his posture relaxed yet steady, hands resting together in his lap. For a moment, neither spoke. Wind brushed against the outer panels, and a muted rustle of trees passed through the silence. The lantern's glow reflected faintly on the lacquered table between them, revealing its delicate imperfections. The traveler shifted slightly, the cushion adjusting under their weight with a quiet sigh of fabric. The monk's eyes observed calmly, not searching, simply present. After a long breath, the elder monk offered a short greeting, his voice low and even. His words were few, carried without urgency. The traveler listened, sensing more in the tone than in the content itself, an invitation to rest, to sit, to be in the moment without expectation. Outside the window, early sunlight wandered across the courtyard stones, creating slow-moving patches of brightness against the shaded ground. The traveler noticed the subtle textures around them, the smooth lacquer of the table, the fine threads of the woven cushion, the faint crackle of the lantern's wick as it settled. Even the sound of distant footsteps, perhaps another monk beginning morning chores, blended seamlessly with the quiet of the room. The elder monk offered one more gentle line, soft enough it seemed woven into the atmosphere rather than spoken aloud. They remained there together in unhurried stillness, the traveler sensing their own breath ease into a slower rhythm. Daylight continued to gather outside, brightening the edges of the paper door. Dust motes drifted lazily through the beam of light entering from the corridor. Nothing moved quickly in this place. Even time seemed to stretch into softer shapes. The quiet presence of the monk held the space like a steady lantern flame. After a while, the monk rose smoothly, his robe settling around his ankles with a muted whisper. The traveler stood as well, following his gesture toward the corridor. The wooden floor, cool beneath their feet, extended forward toward the heart of the monastery. Lanterns hung along the walkway, their frames still holding the faint warmth of yesterday's sun. Beyond them, the day waited quietly, wrapped in the pale gold of early morning. Together they stepped into the corridor, where polished beams reflected soft light and distant mountain air drifted through the open panels. The room behind them remained silent, its lantern continuing to glow gently in the stillness as they walked into the unfolding morning. The corridor opened into a long walkway of polished wood, its surface cool beneath the traveler's steps. Morning sunlight filtered through high windows, falling in shifting bars of gold across the floor. Outside, the faint call of a distant bird echoed between the stone walls. The elder monk walked ahead with unhurried pace, his robe brushing softly against the wooden boards. Each footstep seemed to merge with the stillness surrounding them. As they moved along the hallway, the traveler noticed small details, the grain of the timber darkened by years of use, the faint scent of cedar rising from the beams, the quiet flutter of fabric as the monk turned a corner. Paper doors slid gently in the breeze, releasing brief glimpses of hidden courtyards and empty meditation rooms. Nothing in the monastery appeared rushed. Even the drifting dust in the light seemed to follow a calm rhythm. The hallway eventually opened to a broad sliding door, which the monk pushed aside with a gentle touch. The hinges barely made a sound. Beyond it lay a small garden enclosed by stone walls, where moss spread in soft patches around carved stepping stones. A narrow stream moved through the center, glimmering under the rising sun. Water slipped over small rocks with a sound as delicate as breath. The traveler felt the air grow cooler as they stepped outside. The monk paused near the edge of the stream. He bent to pick up a smooth pebble resting among the damp stones. The traveler watched as he held it lightly between his fingers, his hand steady, his expression unreadable yet serene. The water below reflected the soft blue of the early sky, shifting gently with every ripple. For a moment, neither spoke. The garden held its own silence, shaped by wind through leaves and the steady murmur of flowing water. After a quiet pause, the monk let the pebble fall back into the stream. It dropped without force, disappearing beneath the surface with a soft flicker of light. Circles formed outward in perfect rings, touching the edges of stones and reeds before fading. The traveler watched them dissolve, feeling something in the moment slow even further. The monk offered a single quiet line, his voice as soft as the water's movement. They continued, walking along a stone path that wound through the garden. Dew clung to slender leaves, and small shadows stretched across the stepping stones. A few young monks passed nearby, carrying small tools for their morning tasks. Their robes shifted like muted waves as they moved with silent attention. The traveler nodded as they passed, receiving subtle bows in return. The elder monk led them toward a small bridge arching over the narrow stream. From its center, the traveler could see the water curling around stones, catching the sunlight in 1,000 shifting glimmers. The air held the scent of damp earth and early morning blossoms. The silence felt full, not empty, a quiet that invited listening rather than filled space. Reaching the far side of the bridge, the monk paused once more, allowing the traveler to take in the garden from a new angle. Moss-covered lanterns stood at the corners of the courtyard, their stone surfaces still cool from night. Bamboo leaves rustled gently in the light breeze. The traveler felt the pace of the monastery settle deeper into their senses, guiding their own movement into something slower, more attuned to the place. With a slight gesture, the elder monk resumed walking. The traveler followed, feeling the soft weight of the morning gather around them as they stepped away from the stream and toward the next part of the monastery grounds. A narrow stone path guided them toward the heart of the monastery gardens, where morning light drifted gently across arranged beds of small shrubs and carefully tended plants. The air hung cool and clean, touched by the faint sweetness of blossoms hidden among the leaves. Young monks moved quietly between rows of greenery, carrying tools wrapped in cloth, their steps soft on the damp earth. Each motion they made, placing soil, trimming stems, watering roots, seemed unhurried and deliberate. As the traveler walked deeper into the garden, they observed small details that revealed the care woven into this place. Dew gathered on the tips of low grasses, trembling when touched by even the lightest breeze. A line of miniature trees stood to one side, their trunks curved naturally, yet refined through years of gentle shaping. Their small leaves fluttered in the wind, catching sunlight in pale flashes before settling again. Each tree felt like a story slowed into stillness. The elder monk paused near one of the miniature trees, a pine with a single branch bending gracefully above a bed of smooth stones. He rested a hand lightly on the wooden railing beside it, offering the traveler a moment to take in the shape and texture of its leaves and the slight twist of its trunk. A soft rustle passed through the surrounding bamboo, creating a low whisper that seemed to settle around them. The monk spoke one short, quiet line, then allowed silence to return. Nearby, the sound of running water joined the breeze, faint at first, then clearer as they approached a small channel where water glided along polished stones. It fed a larger basin at the center of the garden, sending ripples across its still surface. The traveler leaned slightly forward to watch koi slip beneath the water's surface, their movements slow and fluid, tails brushing the quiet as if painting patterns on the morning light. The monk continued along the path, and the traveler followed across a wooden walkway raised just above the earth. The boards creaked softly beneath their weight, hinting at years of footsteps taken in this same careful rhythm. Above them, branches arched in loose canopies, filtering sunlight into weaving patterns across the floor. The fragrance of damp wood mixed with the crispness of mountain air. Reaching an open clearing within the garden, they found several monks kneeling beside rows of seedlings. Their hands moved gently, adjusting soil around fragile roots, their breath steady as the traveler approached. None looked up, yet the presence of others moving through the space did not disturb the silence. It simply folded into the wider stillness that defined the morning. The traveler watched for a moment, noticing how each gesture seemed complete, unaffected by haste. They followed the monk toward a set of stone steps leading upward. Small mosses grew along the edges, softening their outline, and stray petals from earlier blossoms lay scattered across the surface. The steps ascended toward an upper walkway bordered by open paper walls that let wind drift freely through the structure. As they climbed, the traveler felt the shift in air, a little cooler, a little more scented by pine drifting from the slopes above. At the top of the steps, the elder monk paused and turned slightly, waiting for the traveler to join him. The monastery grounds stretched outward from here, leading toward another terrace bathed in gentle morning brightness. With a nod, he began walking again, guiding the traveler toward a pavilion overlooking the valley below. They reached a wooden pavilion resting at the edge of a quiet terrace, its beams worn smooth by years of wind and touch. The roof extended outward in a graceful slope, casting a calm shadow over the polished floorboards beneath. As the traveler stepped inside, the cool air shifted into a softer warmth shaped by filtered sunlight. From here, the valley opened wide before them, veiled in a thin layer of morning mist that drifted slowly above distant trees. The elder monk walked to the far side of the pavilion and settled onto a low wooden bench. The traveler joined him, feeling the subtle give of the board beneath their weight. A light breeze slipped into the open space, stirring the sleeves of their clothing and carrying the scent of pine and stone. Below, terraced fields glimmered faintly in the early light, their outlines softened by the mist, as if the valley was still waking. A single bell tone carried from somewhere deeper in the monastery, fading gently into the open air. For a long moment, the two remained silent. The traveler let their gaze move across the shifting landscape, the slow curl of mist rising from the forest, the thin line of a river catching pale light, the way the mountains formed a quiet boundary around the scene. The monk's presence felt steady beside them, his breathing even, his posture relaxed. His silence held a quality that made the space feel fuller, not empty. Eventually, the monk spoke a single brief line, his voice low and calm, blending naturally with the surrounding quiet. His words did not linger long. Instead, they seemed to settle into the stillness like a pebble placed gently on soft earth. The traveler absorbed the moment, feeling no need to respond. The wind carried a faint rustling through the pavilion's wooden beams, and the lantern hanging from the corner swayed almost imperceptibly. The traveler stared out at the valley again. Sunlight now touched the tops of distant trees, turning their leaves a muted gold. The mist had begun to lift in drifting sheets, revealing small clusters of rooftops far below. Birds glided over the treetops, their silhouettes shifting in and out of the light. Each movement seemed slow, deliberate, as though mirroring the calm rhythm of the monastery itself. The monk stood after some time, his robe settling softly around him. With a gentle gesture, he signaled the traveler to rise as well. Footsteps echoed faintly as they walked toward the pavilion's entrance, the wood creaking softly under each step. The world below continued its gradual unfolding as the two stepped out onto the terrace once more. The morning had deepened, its colors richer now, though still soft around the edges. They followed a narrow stone path leading back toward the main buildings. A set of wooden doors stood ahead, slightly open, through which the traveler caught the faint aroma of rice and vegetables carried by the midday preparations. The monk walked with quiet steadiness, offering no rush or expectation, only the gentle rhythm of moving from one place to the next. Soon the sounds of the dining hall approached, mingling with the soft clatter of bowls and the muted steps of monks gathering within. The entrance to the dining hall stood open, revealing a room shaped by simplicity and order. Low tables formed neat rows across the polished wooden floor, each accompanied by a single cushion placed with quiet precision. Steam rose softly from pots set at the center of the hall, carrying the warm scent of rice and vegetables. The traveler stepped inside beside the elder monk, their footsteps blending into the low murmur of movement as monks settled into their places. A gentle hush filled the room as everyone took their seats. The air felt calm, woven together by the soft rustle of robes and the faint sound of breathing. The traveler sat along one wall, where a cushion had been arranged, its woven threads slightly warm from the morning sun that still touched part of the floor. Across the hall, lantern light reflected off smooth bowls and cups, creating small glimmers that flickered as monks shifted into stillness. The head monk rose briefly, offering a short chant in a low, steady tone. Voices joined his, soft but unified, filling the space with a sound that was neither loud nor forceful, but balanced, like a ripple moving through still water. When the chant ended, silence returned naturally, settling over the room with a comforting weight. The traveler felt the quietness extend into their own breath, steadying its rhythm. Serving began with measured motion. Wooden ladles dipped into pots, and portions were placed into each bowl with care. The sound was delicate, the gentle clink of utensils, the faint brush of cloth against wood. One by one, monks received their food, each motion calm and purposeful. When the bowl reached the traveler, its warmth was noticeable even through its smooth surface. The aroma rose lightly into the air, familiar yet subtle. No one began eating until the last portion was served. When the moment came, the hall shifted into an even deeper quiet. The monk beside the traveler picked up his chopsticks with a slow, deliberate motion. The traveler mirrored him, feeling the texture of the wooden utensils between their fingers. The first bites brought simple flavors, warm rice, tender vegetables, presented without ornament, yet somehow fuller in this atmosphere of attentiveness. The meal unfolded slowly. There were no conversations, no glances exchanged, only the collective presence of those eating with quiet awareness. The traveler noticed small details, the faint warmth of the bowl against their palm, the rhythmic lift and set of their chopsticks, the way steam rose in soft spirals from their food before disappearing into the still air. As the meal drew toward its end, monks began cleaning their bowls with a small piece of pickled vegetable, passing it along the surfaces before wiping everything clean with cloth. Movements remained gentle and unhurried, as if the act of finishing the meal carried the same importance as beginning it. The traveler followed along, feeling the fabric glide across the bowl's interior, leaving it dry and smooth. When the final motions were complete, monks placed their utensils neatly in front of them. A calm pause settled across the room. Footsteps resumed only when the head monk rose again, signaling the transition back into the flow of the day. The elder monk beside the traveler stood, offering a small nod toward the doorway. As they walked out of the dining hall together, the scent of warm rice and steam faded into the cooler air of the corridor. Ahead, the quiet hall where afternoon meditation took place waited in soft light, its open doors revealing a space already shaped by stillness. The meditation hall awaited in a pool of muted daylight, its wide wooden floor stretching toward rows of neatly arranged cushions. Paper windows softened the sun into a gentle glow that rested across the beams and walls. As the traveler stepped inside with the elder monk, the coolness of the floor rose through the soles of their feet, steadying their breath. A faint trace of incense lingered in the air, subtle enough to seem part of the wood itself. Monks entered quietly from various doorways, their robes moving like slow waves across the polished boards. Each took a seat with practiced ease, settling onto cushions facing the center of the hall. The traveler followed the elder monk to a space slightly apart, where two cushions rested side by side. The fabric compressed softly beneath them as they lowered themselves into place. Silence formed around them like a gentle canopy. As the hall settled, the elder monk offered a brief instruction, a single calm line, before folding his hands together. His voice was low, absorbed quickly by the open room. The traveler closed their eyes slightly, letting their gaze rest downward, allowing the shapes and light to soften. The breath came naturally, cool on the inhale, warmer on the release. In the quiet, every small sound became distinct. The faint shifting of robes, The soft touch of air moving near the windows, the distant call of a bird outside. Moments stretched gently. Thoughts rose and drifted like passing shadows, their edges dissolving before forming fully. The traveler felt the weight of their body settle into the cushion, the spine lengthening almost on its own, the shoulders easing. Warmth gathered at the palms resting lightly on their lap. Somewhere in the hall, a tiny click echoed, perhaps the settling of wood, before fading into stillness again. With eyes half lowered, the traveler noticed the play of light on the floor. Sunlight moved almost imperceptibly as clouds shifted above the roof, casting soft patterns that drifted across the boards. Dust particles floated in slow circles, illuminated briefly whenever they crossed a beam of brighter light. Their motion felt unhurried, almost suspended in time. The room held all of it, without resistance. The elder monk remained steady beside the traveler, his presence quiet yet grounding. His robe pooled around him in soft folds, rising slightly with each breath. The traveler sensed his stillness not as rigidity, but as relaxed attentiveness, the kind that invited calm rather than imposed it. The hall mirrored this quality, expansive, open, yet intimately close in its quiet. As the minutes passed, the traveler's attention settled deeper. The sound of their own breath wove into the soft ambience of the hall. Exhale followed inhale, with no need to measure or guide it. Thoughts appeared as faint impressions, images, fragments of memory, unfinished concerns, each dissolving like mist as soon as they were noticed. The body felt lighter, the edges softer, as though gently supported by the very air. A subtle shift in the atmosphere signaled the nearing end of the session. Perhaps it was the way monks' breaths aligned in a collective rhythm, or the slightly brighter tone of daylight now touching the floor. The elder monk opened his eyes and breathed out slowly. With a small motion of his hand, he indicated the close of the practice. The traveler lifted their gaze, feeling the hall gradually return to ordinary awareness, while retaining its quiet undertone. Monks rose with the same gentle attention that marked their sitting. The traveler stood as well, adjusting their robe as the cushion regained its shape beneath them. The floor creaked softly as steps moved toward the exit. Outside, the faint sound of distant wind chimes blended with the rustling of leaves along the courtyard walls. The elder monk stepped toward the doorway, waiting for the traveler to join him. Beyond the threshold, sunlight played across stone paths, guiding the way toward the gardens where the next part of the afternoon would unfold. The path beyond the meditation hall opened into a gentle sweep of garden corridors where stone and wood blended seamlessly with the quiet hum of afternoon air. The elder monk walked ahead with unhurried steps, his robe brushing lightly against the ground. The traveler followed, feeling the warmth of sunlight filtered through leaves overhead. Small shadows danced across the stones as the wind stirred branches into soft motion. They soon arrived at a lotus pond, bordered by smooth rocks worn pale over the years. Broad green leaves rested calmly upon the water's surface, some cupping droplets from a passing morning mist. Pale blossoms rose from among them, their petals half open, catching the soft light that shimmered across the pond. A dragonfly skimmed low, touching the surface before darting upward again, leaving a faint ripple behind. The monk paused at the edge, letting the traveler take in the quiet beauty of the scene. Ducks glided through the still water, their reflections wavering gently. The traveler felt the air grow cooler here, as the pond released traces of moisture into the breeze. The monk offered one low line of observation, spoken more like an acknowledgement of the moment than an instruction, then continued walking along the curved path that skirted the pond's edge. They passed into a section of the garden devoted to bonsai trees. Dozens of miniature pines and maples grew in earthen pots, arranged on wooden stands. Their branches twisted in ways that appeared both natural and thoughtfully shaped, forming silhouettes that mirrored full-grown trees on distant mountainsides. A faint scent of damp soil rose from the pots, mingling with the crispness of pine. An elderly monk stood nearby, tending to a small bonsai with delicate precision. His hands, lined with age, moved with surprising grace as he adjusted a thin wire supporting a slender branch. He noticed the elder monk and traveler approaching, and gave a slight nod without breaking the quiet rhythm of his work. His presence radiated the same calm steadiness found throughout the monastery. The elder monk slowed his pace, offering space for the traveler to observe. The elderly monk turned slightly, lifting a pair of small, trimming scissors. He gestured gently toward the traveler, his movement inviting but patient. The traveler stepped forward. The scissors felt light, cool, and finely balanced in their hand. The elderly monk pointed to a tiny shoot growing at an angle that disrupted the tree's gentle symmetry. With a careful motion, the traveler trimmed the shoot. A faint snip broke the silence for only a moment. The elderly monk nodded with quiet approval, then returned to his careful shaping, his fingers guiding the branch with a tenderness that resembled a soft breeze through leaves. The traveler handed back the scissors, noticing how the tree now appeared subtly changed, its form more harmonious. The path continued beyond the bonsai garden, winding through clusters of bamboo that swayed lightly in the wind. Their tall, slender stalks created a soft rustling that echoed between the walls of the courtyard. Shadows of leaves shifted across the traveler's robe, moving like ripples across water. The elder monk walked at a steady pace, pausing now and then to allow the traveler to take in glimpses of the surrounding stillness. Near the end of the garden, a small wooden gate opened to a narrow path leading upward. The boards creaked gently as the monk pushed it aside. Beyond it, sunlight brightened the stones, and the faint breath of mountain air hinted at higher ground ahead. The monk stepped through, motioning for the traveler to follow. Together they began their slow ascent toward the mountain trail that waited above the garden walls. The climb began along a narrow path where stones, warmed by the afternoon sun, pressed softly beneath the traveler's steps. Pines rose on either side, their branches forming shifting canopies of shadow and light across the trail. The elder monk moved with ease, his robe stirring gently behind him each time a breeze slipped down from the higher ridges. The traveler followed, noticing the faint scent of resin released from sun-touched bark. As they ascended, the sounds of the monastery softened into the distance. The quiet here felt different, more spacious, shaped by open air and the slow rhythm of wind moving through the mountains. The trail curved along the slope, revealing glimpses of the valley far below. Patches of mist lingered in shaded crevices, drifting upward in thin veils that dissolved as sunlight reached them. They passed a twisted pine that leaned outward from the cliffside, its trunk shaped by years of wind. The monk paused beside it, resting his hand lightly against the bark. The traveler noticed how the tree's branches bent in gentle arcs, each following a path shaped not by force, but by the conditions it had grown within. A small gust rustled its needles, scattering soft shadows across the stones. After a moment, the monk resumed walking without speaking. The path narrowed before widening again onto a flattened area of rock that overlooked the valley. Here, the air was cooler and clearer, carrying the faint echo of distant water flowing far below. The traveler stepped forward and felt the stillness deepen. Clouds shifted slowly above the peaks, casting soft sails of shadow across the hillsides. Birds glided in wide arcs beneath them, their silhouettes drifting through alternating layers of light and shade. The elder monk lowered himself onto a sun-warmed rock, its smooth surface offering natural support. He gestured for the traveler to sit beside him. Together, they watched the valley breathe, mist rolling, light shifting, branches swaying in gentle rhythm. The traveler felt a quiet settle in their chest, matching the calm unfolding before them. After several moments, the monk spoke a short, simple line. His voice blended into the open air, carried easily by the mountain breeze. The traveler absorbed the words without needing to respond. They simply sat, feeling the warmth of the stone beneath them and the steady presence of the monk at their side. A dragonfly passed overhead, its wings catching flashes of sunlight before disappearing toward the trees. The wind brushed along the ridge, carrying the scent of distant rain. The traveler tilted their face slightly into the breeze, feeling its coolness pass over their skin. The monk remained still, eyes partially lowered, as if listening to something held within the quiet. Eventually he rose, his robe falling back into place with a soft whisper. The traveler followed, brushing grainy dust from their palms. The monk took a few steps toward the edge, glancing down the descending trail that wound back toward the monastery. He gave a small nod, an invitation to continue. They began their descent slowly, the stones shifting in color as the sun lowered. The valley below grew softer in tone, shadows stretching gently across its contours. Each step carried them gradually from the ridge's open air toward the waiting quiet of the temple grounds. Lanterns had begun to glow along the pathways by the time they returned to the monastery grounds, their warm light settling into small pools across the stone walkways. Evening air drifted in cool currents between the buildings, carrying the faint scent of rice and simmering broth from the kitchen. The elder monk walked with the same measured pace as before, guiding the traveler through the quiet arches that opened toward the dining hall. Inside, the room was softly illuminated by candles placed in recessed alcoves. Monks moved calmly to their seats, their robes brushing gently against the floor. The low tables were arranged as they had been during the midday meal, simple and without adornment. The traveler took their place along one wall, where a cushion awaited. The elder monk sat nearby, his posture composed, his gaze steady but relaxed. The evening meal unfolded with the same unhurried rhythm as earlier in the day. Steam curled from bowls as servings were passed with silent coordination. The traveler lifted their utensils with slow awareness, noticing the texture of the vegetables, the mild warmth rising from the rice, and the subtle taste of broth absorbed into the ingredients. The hall's quiet felt deeper in the evening, as though the day's activities had settled into a single, shared breath. When the meal concluded, monks cleaned their bowls with the same careful attention as before. Cloth folded over porcelain made a soft whisper, and water poured into wooden basins sounded like a distant stream. Once finished, the monks rose and filed out with quiet grace, leaving the hall dim but peaceful. The elder monk waited for the traveler, then led them toward a narrow corridor lit by a row of small lanterns. The corridor opened into a small tea room overlooking the garden. The room was furnished with a low table and two cushions placed beside a window that framed the slowly darkening sky. Lantern light outside shimmered on the surface of a stone basin filled with fresh water. The elder monk poured hot water over a small handful of leaves, releasing a warm, earthy fragrance that drifted throughout the room. The tea steamed gently in their cups. Its warmth spread through the travelers' hands as they lifted it, the cup's smooth surface reflecting a dim glow from the lantern. They sipped slowly, tasting faint notes of grass and wood, flavors that revealed themselves more quietly than during the day. The monk took his own sip, offering a single soft line that fit easily into the stillness of the space. For a time, they remained seated, listening to the sounds of the evening settling into the monastery. Crickets chirped faintly from the garden. A bamboo fountain clicked rhythmically in the distance, its wooden arm filling and emptying in a slow pattern. Leaves rustled lightly each time wind moved through the courtyard. The traveler felt the day's long journey gather into a sense of gentle closure. The monk eventually set his cup down, its base touching the table with a delicate sound. He stood and beckoned the traveler to follow. Lanterns flickered along the passageway as they walked toward the meditation hall once again. The room's interior glowed softly, candles casting long shadows across the floor. The monks were already assembling for the evening practice, each finding their cushion in deliberate silence. The elder monk guided the traveler to a place near the side, a cushion slightly warmed from the lanterns positioned nearby. They settled onto it as the hall grew still. Outside, the final traces of daylight faded from the sky, leaving only the soft radiance of candles and lanterns to hold the room in quiet light. As the monk folded his hands and lowered his gaze, the traveler felt the hall shift gently into a deeper layer of calm, ready for the night's meditation to begin. The guest room greeted them with a deeper quiet than earlier in the day, its single candle casting a warm circle of light across the smooth wooden floor. Shadows gathered softly in the corners, shaped by the flicker of the flame. The traveler stepped inside, feeling the cool air settle over their skin after leaving the lantern-lit corridors. The elder monk paused at the doorway for a brief moment, offering a small nod before sliding the panel closed with a gentle sound. The room held only what was needed: a simple mat laid neatly against the far wall, a low table supporting the candle, and a ceramic pitcher beside an empty cup. The traveler sat on the mat, letting their weight sink into its firm support. The stillness of the room seemed to deepen with each breath, as if the entire monastery had exhaled into the night. Outside, distant insects created a soft, steady hum, and somewhere further away, a bamboo fountain clicked in its slow rhythm. The traveler loosened their shoulders, leaning back slightly as the candle's warm glow reached them. They traced the subtle textures in the wooden planks, lines worn smooth over the years, knots shaped by time, shadows shifting with the flame. The faint scent of the earlier incense still lingered in their robe, mingling with the coolness drifting through the small window. Even the silence felt layered, the quiet of walls, the quiet of night air, the quiet of a long day finding its end. After a few moments, they rose and poured a small amount of water from the pitcher. The liquid caught the candlelight, forming soft reflections against the cup. They sipped slowly, letting the coolness spread through their chest before setting the cup down again. The mat awaited, its surface slightly warmed from their earlier presence. They lay upon it, adjusting the thin blanket so it rested lightly over their body. The candle glowed steadily, its flame rising and softening in calm patterns. As the travelers settled in, their breath began to fall into an easy rhythm. Thoughts from the day drifted through their mind like faint shapes, lanterns swinging in evening air, the soft weight of tea in a cup, the pond's shifting reflections, footsteps along mountain trails. Each image lingered briefly, then thinned into the stillness, as if dissolving into the wide quiet of the room. The candle's flame wavered once, then steadied itself again, casting gentle patterns across the ceiling. The window's paper panel rustled when a breeze slipped through the gap, bringing with it the scent of pine and the mild chill of night. The traveler's eyes followed the shifting shadows on the wall, branches swaying, the slow drift of clouds passing over the moon. These movements felt like a final unfolding of the day, a calm settling that required no interpretation, only quiet witnessing. Their chest rose and fell, the blanket lifting softly with each breath. Eventually, the candle burned lower, its flame shrinking into a softer glow. The traveler turned slightly on the mat, feeling the firmness beneath them hold their body in a stable, grounding way. Their eyelids grew heavier. The sounds outside blended into a single, continuous hush. The faint breeze, insects murmuring, the distant, intermittent tap of water. Even these eventually softened, as though the night itself was dimming into deeper rest. As the flame reached its final minutes, a calm darkness gathered gently along the edges of the room. The traveler's breathing slowed further, steady and unforced. Their senses drifted towards sleep, the last trace of candlelight flickering as though bowing out of the day. When the candle finally extinguished, the room settled into complete stillness, and the traveler slipped quietly into sleep. Morning bells sounded softly through the thin paper walls, their tones rising and fading with the gentle clarity of dawn. The traveler stirred beneath the blanket, feeling the cool air settle lightly across their skin. When they sat up, the guest room was washed in pale light, softened by the paper window, quiet as the slow breath of the mountains outside. The mat beneath them felt firm and steady, grounding them in the first still moments of the day. A knock, barely audible, came at the door. When the traveler slid it open, a young monk stood waiting with a wooden basin filled with warm water. Steam curled upward as he bowed slightly, placing the basin inside before stepping away in silence. The traveler dipped their hands into the water, the warmth easing the coolness from their fingers. They washed their face, feeling the contrast between warm water and crisp air sharpen their senses gently. Stepping outside, the traveler saw the monastery beginning its quiet morning rhythm. Monks swept pathways with long-handled brooms, the bristles making soft arcs over stone. Others tended to the gardens, adjusting bamboo supports and watering flowers that glistened with dew. The scent of damp earth mingled with the faint aroma of breakfast, simmering somewhere deeper within the halls. Each movement, each sound, rested lightly in the morning stillness. The elder monk appeared from a side walkway, offering a small bow as the traveler approached. His robe caught the morning light, its folds shifting calmly with each step. He gestured for the traveler to join him, and together they walked toward the garden where the day before had unfolded. The sun had only just risen high enough to touch the tops of the surrounding trees, leaving the lower branches wrapped in blue-toned shade. As they reached the garden's edge, the traveler noticed a layer of thin mist lingering close to the ground. It drifted in slow currents between stones and moss, parting gently as they moved through it. Birds called from higher branches, their voices weaving into the fabric of morning air. The elder monk stopped near a stone bench warmed faintly by the rising sun. He sat, and the traveler joined him, feeling the stone's temperature shift beneath their hands. From this quiet vantage point, the garden seemed to breathe. Blossoms opened in the light, their petals still holding tiny droplets that glimmered like faint stars. Leaves stirred when a breeze traced its way through the bamboo. Water from a nearby stream slipped along its narrow channel, catching the first golden tones of morning. The traveler felt the calm of the place extend gently into their chest. The elder monk spoke a single brief line. His voice carried the same soft steadiness as the day before, offering no instruction, only presence. The traveler listened, though the meaning lay more in the tone than in the words themselves. A sense of continuity settled in the moment, the feeling of returning to a familiar place, though the light and air had changed with the new day. They sat together for a while, watching small shifts in the garden as the sun climbed higher. Shadows shortened, the mist thinned into barely visible wisps. A pair of young monks crossed the courtyard, carrying wooden buckets with smooth, practiced steps. Their robes fluttered gently around their ankles as they moved along the path, disappearing behind the far wall. The elder monk rose at last, giving the traveler a quiet nod. There was no need for direction. The day was unfolding naturally, carrying them toward the next step. They walked side by side along the stone path, their footsteps merging with the soft sounds of the morning. Ahead, the open garden space invited them deeper into the unfolding calm, just as the previous day had done, yet with the fresh air and light of a new beginning. They moved toward the central garden, where the morning sun reached more fully across open spaces. Light collected on the tops of shrubs and miniature trees, creating gentle highlights that shifted with the breeze. The traveler followed the elder monk along a winding path lined with smooth stones. Each step carried the muffled sound of their footfalls, softened by the moss and earth surrounding the walkway. A stone bench waited beneath the spreading branches of an old maple. Its leaves stirred lightly overhead, scattering small patches of light onto the ground. The elder monk sat, and the traveler settled beside him. From here, the garden opened in layers, rippling bamboo, curved hedges shaped over seasons, and distant rooftops framed by lifting morning haze. A faint scent of wet grass lingered in the air. The monk spoke a short, simple line. His words were carried on the breeze, gentle enough to blend into the garden's natural quiet. The traveler listened without urgency, letting the sound move through them like the rustling of leaves. Nothing required interpretation. The tone and presence alone shaped the moment. Around them, the world continued in slow rhythm, the fall of a single leaf, the soft turn of a cloud, the murmur of water from a stream just out of view. After a time, the monk rose and began walking again. The traveler followed, stepping along a path where petals from earlier blooms lay scattered across stone. The colors, pale pinks, muted whites, stood out softly against the gray of the walkway. A pair of young monks tended to nearby plants, adjusting branches and clearing away fallen twigs. Their movements were unhurried, shaped by quiet focus rather than speed. The path bent gently and revealed a shaded courtyard where a small wooden gate stood partly open. Through the opening, the traveler glimpsed a sunlit section of the garden, where the ground warmed beneath the sky. The monk guided them through. Here, a row of tall pines cast long shadows toward the far wall, their trunks rising straight and steady against the backdrop of light blue morning. Birds flitted between branches, their wings flickering like small fans. A wooden walkway bordered the courtyard, its beams warmed by sunlight. As they crossed it, the traveler felt the boards flex slightly underfoot, giving a muted creak in response. Through the open slats, patches of gravel and grass appeared below, softened by the gentle movement of the wind. The walkway led them to a shaded corner, where a smaller garden seemed tucked away, almost hidden from the rest of the monastery. In this quieter area, a collection of rocks had been arranged into a simple formation beside a still pool. The water reflected the sky with a clarity that made the surface appear motionless. A single leaf drifted down from above and landed with a faint touch that sent a ripple across the reflection. The elder monk paused at the pool's edge. The traveler watched the ripple expand outward, softening as it reached the stones and faded into still water once more. The monk offered another brief line, softer this time, almost an exhale. The traveler nodded without needing to answer. The stillness of the pool and the soft warmth of the light seemed to draw the moment out gently, as though time itself had slowed to match the pond's calm. When they stepped away from the pool, the path guided them toward the upper garden. The air felt slightly warmer now, hinting at midday approaching. The traveler sensed the subtle shift of the day, shadows shortening, birds changing their patterns of movement, leaves catching the brighter light. The elder monk continued forward with steady steps, and the traveler followed as the garden stretched ahead, inviting them toward the next quiet unfolding. The path carried them toward a quieter corner of the monastery, where a long wooden building stood with its windows set high along the walls. The elder monk slid open the door, revealing the library within. Light entered through tall paper panels, scattering gently across shelves that held rows of scrolls and bound texts. The air inside was cool and faintly scented with old paper and polished wood. Monks sat at simple tables spaced evenly throughout the room, their movements quiet and deliberate. Some copied lines of text with thin brushes, while others read with slow attention. The traveler followed the monk toward an empty table near the center. The grain of the wood beneath their hands felt smooth, shaped by years of similar touch. The elder monk selected a large, worn volume from a shelf and placed it gently upon the table. When he opened it, the soft rustle of pages lifted into the still air. Illustrations in faded ink lay scattered among the text. Mountains, rivers, and figures drawn with light, careful strokes. The traveler observed their subtle details, each line capturing a sense of quiet movement. The monk touched the edge of one page, offering a short line that seemed to acknowledge the preservation of such work. His words were as soft as the shifting light across the paper. For a moment, they lingered in silence, simply taking in the calm of the library. The traveler noticed how every sound, the turning of a page, the soft tap of a brush against ink, the distant wind against the outer walls, seemed to exist without interruption or hurry. The elder monk closed the book gently and returned it to its place, sliding it between other volumes that stood like quiet companions on the shelf. When they stepped outside, the afternoon light had shifted, warming the stone walkway beneath their feet. The elder monk led the traveler back toward the meditation hall, where the open doorway revealed cushions already arranged in neat rows. A faint breeze from outside moved through the paper windows, carrying the scent of nearby pines into the spacious room. They entered and took their seats once more. The hall felt slightly different in the afternoon, lighter, yet still grounded in the same deep quiet. The elder monk spoke a brief, calming line, and the traveler lowered their gaze, allowing their breath to settle. The soft creak of the wooden floor marked the movements of other monks arriving and taking their places. The meditation began without ceremony. The traveler felt their shoulders ease, their breath gradually falling into a natural rhythm. Light filtered through the windows in long, rectangular patterns, gently shifting as the sun moved behind drifting clouds. A distant rustle of leaves outside offered a quiet backdrop to the stillness within. Thoughts came and went, subtle and unforced, disappearing like dust motes leaving a sunbeam. As the session deepened, the traveler felt their awareness expand into the open quiet of the hall. Minutes passed unmeasured. The steady presence of monks sitting throughout the room added a sense of shared stillness, each breath part of a larger calm. The traveler noticed the simple comfort of sitting, warmth at the palms, a slight sinking into the cushion, the body's gradual settling. A soft tap of a wooden block signaled the close of the meditation. Monks shifted gently, their robes brushing against the floor. The traveler opened their eyes, feeling the hall brighten slightly as their awareness returned to surface details. The lines of the tatami, the faint shimmer of candlelight, and the elder monk rising beside them with a smooth motion. When they stepped outside, the air had cooled slightly, and the shade from the surrounding pines cast patterned shadows across the ground. The monk gave a small nod toward a gate leading beyond the courtyard. The traveler followed, sensing the subtle invitation of the path, extending into the forest beyond the monastery walls. The forest path began just beyond the monastery gate, where the stone walkway gave way to packed earth softened by fallen needles. Tall pines rose on either side, their trunks straight and quiet, guiding the traveler and the elder monk into deeper shade. The air carried the coolness of the mountain, mixed with the faint scent of sap and damp soil. As they walked, branches overhead shifted gently, letting thin bands of sunlight fall across the path in slow-moving patterns. The ground beneath their feet felt uneven in places, shaped by roots that surfaced like old lines beneath the soil. The traveler adjusted their steps, listening to the muted crunch of pine needles underfoot. A small stream soon appeared beside the path, flowing between smooth stones darkened by moisture. Its gentle movement created a soft, continuous murmur that wove through the silence without disturbing it. The elder monk paused briefly, allowing the traveler to observe the way the water curved around the stones. A fallen tree lay across a wider part of the stream, its bark stripped away by seasons of wind and rain. Moss grew in soft patches along its length, glowing faintly where sunlight touched it. The monk stepped onto the trunk with careful balance, and the traveler followed, feeling the slightly yielding surface beneath their feet. The stream moved quietly below them, its clarity revealing pebbles and muted tones of brown and green. When they reached the opposite bank, the air felt cooler, as if the water had carried its chill upward. They continued along a gentle incline where ferns spread wide fronds across the forest floor. The traveler noticed how different the quiet felt here, thicker, almost textured, shaped by layers of leaves absorbing sound. Birds called intermittently from distant branches, their voices softened by the depth of the woods. The monk walked with steady rhythm, his robe brushing lightly against nearby plants, each sound blending naturally into the forest's subdued breath. A clearing appeared as the path curved, revealing a large, flat rock warmed by the afternoon sun. Its surface held the stored heat of the day, offering a subtle glow against the cooler shadows around it. The elder monk stepped onto it and sat, his posture relaxed. The traveler joined him, feeling the warmth beneath their palms and the smoothness of the stone shaped by rain and seasons. From this vantage point, the trees formed a quiet circle, their tops swaying gently against the sky. The monk spoke a single line, soft, steady, unobtrusive. His words drifted through the clearing like a natural part of the air, neither urging nor directing. The traveler absorbed the moment, noticing how light filtered through the canopy above, breaking into small fragments that danced along the rock's surface. A breeze passed through the clearing, carrying with it the scent of distant blossoms and the cool breath of higher elevations. They rested for a while, letting the silence expand naturally between them. The traveler watched a small leaf detach from a branch and drift downward, turning slightly as it fell before landing near the edge of the rock. Even this small motion felt unhurried, in harmony with the quiet that surrounded them. The stream's distant murmur continued as a soft backdrop, steady and unobtrusive. When the elder monk rose, the traveler followed. Shadows had lengthened across the forest floor, blending into one another as the day moved closer to evening. The path back toward the monastery waited beyond the edge of the clearing, marked by the familiar curve of pines and the steady downward slope. The monk took the first steps, and the traveler mirrored his pace, the warmth of the rock still lingering faintly in their hands. Together they walked slowly back toward the gate, guided by the fading light filtering through the branches above. The monastery gate appeared through the thinning trees, its wooden frame touched by the late-day sun. As they stepped back onto the stone walkway, the traveler felt the shift from forest quiet to temple stillness, different yet joined by the same calm undercurrent. Lanterns along the path had been freshly lit, their soft glow settling into gentle halos on the ground. The elder monk walked ahead with unhurried steps, leading the traveler toward the main courtyard, where evening shadows stretched long and smooth across the stones. The meditation hall awaited, with its doors partially open, revealing the warm flicker of candlelight inside. Evening practice had already begun, and the faint sound of robes settling onto cushions drifted outward. The elder monk gestured for the traveler to enter. They found a place near the back of the hall, where the wooden floor felt slightly cool beneath their knees. The candles cast moving reflections along the beams, and the air held a faint trace of incense remaining from earlier sessions. As the hall settled into full quiet, the traveler felt their breath ease into a slow, natural rhythm. The steady presence of the monks around them formed a calm that filled the room without weight. Light shifted as the candles flickered, creating small patterns that drifted across the floor. The traveler watched these subtle changes, sensing how the day's movements, mountain paths, forest shade, pond reflections, gathered softly within the spacious quiet of the hall. When the practice concluded, a wooden block sounded once, its tone soft but clear. The monks rose in gentle sequence, their robes brushing lightly against one another. The elder monk met the traveler at the doorway. He offered a short line, calm and steady, before turning toward a lantern-lit walkway. The traveler followed, the boards creaking softly beneath their feet. Night had settled fully now, wrapping the courtyard in cool air and faint scents carried by the breeze. They walked toward the guest quarters where the traveler would spend one final night. The elder monk paused beneath a hanging lantern, its light swaying slightly with the wind. He bowed with quiet formality, the gesture simple and complete. The traveler returned the bow, feeling the moment's softness rest naturally between them. With that, the monk stepped away along the corridor, his figure gradually blending into the lantern glow. Morning arrived with muted light, soft and pale across the horizon. The traveler met the elder monk at the base of the mountain path, where mist clung to the edges of the stones. They walked together in lingering silence, following the familiar trail upward. The air held the coolness of early dawn, and the forest beyond the monastery glowed faintly with the first hints of sunlight. When they reached the viewpoint, the valley opened beneath them once more, quiet, wide, and touched by drifting morning clouds. The monk stood beside the traveler for a long moment. Nothing was said, nothing needed to be. Wind moved gently through the trees, carrying the faint scent of pine. The traveler gazed across the valley, noticing how its shapes felt both unchanged and subtly different in the morning's soft light. When the monk finally stepped back, the traveler turned toward him, offering a final bow. The monk returned it with the same calm steadiness he had shown from the beginning. The descent down the mountain was unhurried. Stones shifted in color as the sun rose higher, warming the path beneath the traveler's feet. Birds circled above the treetops, and the faint sound of a distant river reached them in occasional waves. When the traveler reached the village at the foot of the mountain, a small tea house offered a quiet place to rest. They sat by a wooden window, watching villagers move through their morning routines, opening shops, sweeping doorways, carrying baskets from stall to stall. A cup of tea warmed the traveler's hands. Outside, sunlight filtered through scattered clouds, casting slow-moving shadows across the square. The world felt familiar, yet touched by a quiet that seemed to linger from the mountain. The traveler watched as steam rose from the cup, curling into the cool air before thinning gently into nothing. Beyond the village, the road continued, stretching toward the rhythms of ordinary days that waited ahead.